to completely push it all into the dark recesses of our public consciousness is not the answer. That's just a part of why I'm doing this video, is that it seems like we've forgotten this ancient practice because of all this massive, huge colonization, suppression. And that's why I think we need to look at this ancient form of fighting practice again and actually start bringing it to the surface and maybe start practicing it as Irish people. Bataireacht, Ireland's ancient form of stick fighting. Something that was brought to my attention by a person that has been watching my content. The fact that it isn't actually practiced, is not known about, and it's not kind of taken seriously as a martial art or a type of Irish martial art, is something that I was interested in. The second I talked to this person, who I'll mention later on in the video, it will become very clear why I was hooked on the story. From weapon to symbol, the lost art of Irish stick fighting. Bataireacht. For centuries and millennia, Ireland has been known for its resilience, its fighting back off invaders, from not being conquered by the Romans, for defeating the Vikings, for falling to the British, but ultimately overcoming them by winning the Republic. Of course, we still have the 6 counties, but, you know, we did beat them in the guerrilla warfare. So Ireland has been known for this resilience and this rebellion and this fighting spirit. But there's a part of that history that isn't really known today. It is known, but it's not really talked about, and it's not really widely known. This is the ancient form of Bataireacht. It is to do with the shillelagh, which is actually a type of stick, a wooden stick, a big, long, almost like a walking stick. It is a walking stick, but it is also a weapon. So this is what this video is about today. There's a modern practitioner who is trying to revive and is reviving this lost ancient kind of Irish version of a martial art. And he contacted me, and I wanted to research this properly and bring it to you. Now, there's a good amount of it covered online, but I wanted to give you my own spin on it. For centuries, Ireland has been known for its resilience, its culture, and its fierce sense of independence. But there's one forgotten chapter in Irish history that reveals a hidden layer of this fighting spirit. A martial art known as Bataireacht, or Irish stick fighting, practiced with the iconic shillelagh. Today, the shillelagh is often seen as a simple walking stick or a symbol of Irish heritage, kind of like, almost like the Americans have kind of kept it going. It's more something I'll get into later on in the video, but it's kind of something that the Americans would buy. Like, you wouldn't see many Irish people with this, except for the older generation. But obviously its roots run much deeper, tied to survival, honour and rebellion. Irish heroes have wielded all forms of sticks, including shillelaghs, cudgels and other forms of stick weapons. This has been happening for millennia. Bataireacht was a traditional martial art of using a stick, typically of a blackthorn tree, blackthorn wood, shillelagh in combat. And there is this whole huge supernatural kind of mystical part of around the blackthorn tree being close to the fairies and stuff. So this is almost like the ultimate shillelagh. The shillelagh can be constructed with other woods, but when it's formed with the blackthorn, it is something very special. In the hands of a skilled fighter, this humble stick became a powerful weapon, offering protection and status. Whether in the narrow alleyways of the cities and towns or the rugged hills of rural Ireland, the art of the stick was more than just a way to defend oneself. It was a symbol of pride, strength and Irish identity. It is even likely Ireland's greatest heroes, such as Brian Boru, would have used or been trained in this form of fighting. Clubs, cudgels, shillelaghs, everything was used in, medieval warfare, because swords, there was times when you couldn't have these weapons, slingshots and spears, clubs, as I said, shillelaghs, these were all a part of an arsenal of a medieval Irish warrior. It's very likely that even going right back to the likes of Cuchulainn and Fionnmacooil and stuff like that, that this would have been something that was prominent. The reality, that's how people were using these rudimentary things. It's likely Cuchulainn was using a stick as a walking stick, as a weapon, as a kind of a way of playing with stones and stuff like that, and that's how he killed the hound. In a time when swords or axes weren't always accessible, the bata could serve as both a training tool and reliable weapon. The bata was a practical part of everyday life. Bata is stick, and warriors honed their combat skills using the stick to prepare for battle. The origins of Bataireacht can be traced back to medieval Ireland, with references to stick fighting appearing in some of the earliest Irish manuscripts and texts. Interestingly, the town of Shillelagh in County Wicklow is often referenced as the connection to the shillelagh stick itself. It's all in the name, Shillelagh. It's thought that the town, surrounded by blackthorn forests, played a pivotal role in producing these iconic weapons. Many believe that the town lent its name to the stick, a connection that stands as a reminder of the shillelagh's roots in both land and culture of Ireland. The shillelagh, typically made from a sturdy blackthorn wood, was not only highly effective in combat, but also symbolic of resilience and of the supernatural realm, the fairies, the blackthorn forests. Blackthorn wood itself, with its dense, thorny branches, is known for its durability and strength, a fitting parallel to the Irish people's endurance. The traditional process of crafting a shillelagh required selecting the right blackthorn branch, stripping it of its bark, curing it for peat fire, and polishing it into a hardened, glossy finish. The result was a beautifully crafted, weighty stick that could withstand both wear and combat. But why so few have heard of this ancient Irish art form today? Why so few heard of the Bataireacht? This is something that is very unique and weird about Irish culture. There's a lot of this stuff that's been suppressed and pushed away. A lot of it's down to the British imperial colonisation. A lot of it's down to the Roman Catholic suppression. There's a lot of it down to the fact that things were bet out of the Irish people, out of the Irish psyche. And almost we became shameful of these things. There was this other element as well where the Americanization or the capitalization of these products and the kind of romanticization has kind of turned us off it as well. It's not to blame anyone here, but there is this kind of element of us being kind of a little bit ashamed or pushed away those kind of images of ourselves, these stereotypical images. It's something I'm going to cover in this video. How does this practice so closely tied to Irish culture fade into obscurity? To understand this, we need to look back to Ireland's tumultuous history. During British colonisation, Irish people were systematically stripped of their weapons. Laws like the penal laws of the 17th century disarmed the Irish population, making swords and other weapons illegal for most. In response, the Irish turned to what they had: wood from the countryside, specifically blackthorn, to craft a weapon that could serve both as a tool for walking and, when needed, as a means of self-defence. Very, very, very clever. As historian John Hurley notes in Shillelagh, the Irish fighting stick, the penal laws could take away Ireland's swords, but they could not disarm Ireland's spirit. In rural Ireland during the 18th and 19th centuries, Bataireacht became widespread, particularly during events like fairs and gatherings, where disputes were settled with a display of skill and strength. These faction fights, massive brawls between rival families or clans, were common, and the shillelagh was a weapon of choice. One infamous example is the Fair of Turlough in County Galway, where hundreds of men engaged in bloody faction fights over the years. As John W. Hurley writes in Shillelagh, the Irish fighting stick, faction fighting was an expression of ancient clan warfare, rechanneled into a different social landscape. But according to a well-written article by the news website Vice, they talk about the ritualized nature of faction fights that were not necessarily all about formal disputes. The purpose of a faction fight could be due to numerous issues. It seems the primary motivation of large-scale shillelagh battles was the ritual, the performance of shillelagh law, which, while violent and dangerous, was also somewhat romantic and fashionable. Factions would often agree ahead of time to a melee, and then meet at a specific time and place to parley, and then fight. Women and children attended to watch, music played, and both sides would stand in lines, facing each other, while singing, taunting, laughing, and generally building up morale, before the mounting tension broke, and each group prepared to charge. It goes on to describe how the faction fight ritual would play out, and how specific rules and laws had to be abided by. As historian John Hurley carefully outlined those rules in his book referenced before. Here's a couple of examples of these rules. If a faction is greatly outnumbered, members of the more numerous faction must join them in order to even out the sides. It's amazing. It just seems like this wasn't really always about like clan versus clan. It seemed to be more like a kind of a very heavy duty sport, you know. If a third faction is involved, they should join with the less numerous faction. Again, this seems pretty weird, because if you were against each other, why would you join each other, you know? No attacking of one man by more than one man. Now, there's many more rules. If you want to check it out, John W. Hurley has a lot written on that. Sorry, there's another one here. If one man unfairly attacks another man, his own faction will attack them. This is crazy. It just shows me that this is really a ritual. This is like a sport, a blood sport, or a kind of like, you know, and people condemn this, but like we watch MMA, we watch UFC, we watch boxing, you know, what's any different? There is this kind of thing, then this thing that I am thinking about, you know, when I'm reading all this, is that we innately need to, you know, get this violence out of us. You know, I go to the gym, I need to punch a boxing bag. If you made it this far in the video, I would really appreciate if you would like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. Also leave a comment, let me know your thoughts. Even if you don't like the video, let me know. I will try to comment back to everybody, reply to everyone. Also, my book, The Forgotten Prince, is out now. You can get it at www.bertiebrosnanfilms.com. All of this really helps me continue the channel. Also, I have posters and I also have merch that's coming out soon. Everything is linked at bertiebrosnanfilms.com. All of it supports the channel. And if anybody wants to donate to PayPal or anything like buy me a coffee, they're all linked in the description. And actually, we'll just have a little bit of a title here as well. Thank you so much. Back to the video. While faction fighting was steeped in tradition, it wasn't exactly seen as honourable by all. The Catholic Church in particular played a significant role in suppressing these faction fights. As the Church's influence grew throughout the 19th century, priests actively discouraged such violent gatherings, urging the congregations to avoid the moral dangers of brawling. The Church promoted peace, self-restraint, and communal harmony, viewing faction fights as a symptom of lawlessness that hindered Ireland's spiritual and social progress. Father Theobald Mathew, known as the Apostle of Temperance, indeed played a significant role in curtailing faction fights across Ireland through his temperance campaign. His anti-drinking movement started in 1838, drew millions of pledges from people eager to abstain from alcohol. This shift in attitudes impacted the prevalence of public gatherings, faction fights, which commonly involved alcohol-fueled disputes. Listen, I don't disagree with the realities of, you know, people getting absolutely smashed and everybody fighting each other. And I'm going to be absolutely abundantly clear here. I'm not saying that violence is the answer to anything, but perhaps we need a little bit of it every now and again for cathartic kind of, you know, because we watch this stuff, like you know what I mean? People fight, you know, people argue. Sometimes anger needs to be expressed. Punch a boxing bag, like it's a kind of a requirement to completely push it all into the dark recesses of our public consciousness is not the answer, you know what I mean? And that's just a part of why I'm doing this video, is that it seems like we've forgotten this ancient practice because of all this massive, huge colonization and, you know, suppression. And that's why I think we need to look at this ancient form of fighting practice again and actually start bringing it to the surface and maybe start practicing it as Irish people. The temperance movement under his leadership contributed to a broader social shift away from these conflicts, thus reducing the popularity and visibility of Bataireacht. I'm going to be straight up as well. Bataireacht is how I'm seeing that it's pronounced online, so I know there could be slight changes to that, the way that's pronounced with different dialects, but Bataireacht seems to be the one that the consensus is with, and I apologize if anybody reads that differently, but that's my research has said Bataireacht. Father Mathew's own words captured this sentiment, condemning faction fighting as deadly and disgraceful, especially in a society seeking moral reform. The combination of Mathew's influence and the Church's disapproval contributed significantly to the public perception of Bataireacht. changing from an honourable skill to a relic of a more chaotic period in Irish history. You see, an honourable skill, and it was basically thrown into a kind of a shameful view, like that we should be ashamed of it. And then ultimately, the Americans, who were very pure in their intentions, took this thing that they were proud of, because us immigrants went over and we brought it with us, but then it became this romanticized thing, and it just turned into a kind of a commercial thing, which I'll get into later on. So it's not about giving out I'm glad the Americans kept it alive. Don't get me wrong. Actually, I'm really proud the fact that they kept it alive, because if they didn't, maybe we would have totally forgotten about it in certain respects. British authorities were also keen to suppress any form of public disorder, including the mass brawls fueled by Bataireacht. The practice was pushed into the shadows, slowly fading from public life. And yet the shillelagh carried on, crossing the Atlantic with Irish immigrants during the Great Famine. It was in the chaotic streets of New York City that the Irish stick fighting found a new voice, and that was through the neighbourhood known as the 5 Points. As we all know, that movie, Gangs of New York. The 5 Points neighbourhood in New York was a melting pot of poverty, crime and cultural tension, with a large population of Irish immigrants. Here the shillelagh was more than just a symbol of Irish roots. It was a street weapon. The notorious gang, the Dead Rabbits, used shillelaghs in their brutal clashes with rival gangs like the Bowery Boys. These street battles mirrored the faction fights of Ireland, where the bata was still used as a tool of survival and dominance. As described in Tyler Anbiter's book 5 Points, the Dead Rabbits often engaged in street battles using shillelaghs as a weapon of choice, continuing the tradition of Irish faction fighting in America, which is fantastic. Obviously not the violence and the deaths and all that, but the fact that they kept it going there is just so cool to me. It's so cool. And that's where the romanticism came from, of course. And I love that tune at the beginning of the Gangs of New York. That kind of whistling, and they're all walking out. I fucking love that. I really love that. That's so cool. Like, it captures something really primal in me as an Irish person. In a way, the Dead Rabbits carried on the tradition of Bataireacht, turning the shillelagh into a weapon of defiance once more. But despite its role in the underworld of New York, Bataireacht itself never became formalized or institutionalized, unlike other martial arts in the world that were adapted and preserved through schools and organizations. Instead, it lingered in folklore and memory, fading further with each generation. So how did the shillelagh transform from a feared weapon into a symbol we know today? The answer lies both in the cultural evolution and romanticism. Historically, the shillelagh did evolve from a weapon, crafted often from blackthorn and hardened through various techniques like fire smoke treatment, to an emblem of Irish identity and resilience, especially noted in immigrant communities. Over time, as faction fighting declined, it became more of a cultural artifact and symbol rather than a fighting tool, maybe more so like a walking stick for elderly people. In some accounts, it represents nostalgia for Irish rural life and the struggles of past generations, reflecting Ireland's resilience and humour while travelling with immigrants across the world. The shillelagh and the fighting Irish symbolism continued to resonate in modern culture, notably, obviously, in the United States. One of the most famous examples, as we all know, is the Fighting Irish logo of the University of Notre Dame, featuring a leprechaun with its fists raised. This is where the problem happens with us Irish looking at that, right? In essence, it does kind of echo the resilience and warrior spirit associated with Irish heritage. Irish American neighbourhoods also embraced this imagery, while shillelaghs and faction Irish motifs in pubs, sports clubs and cultural events as symbols of toughness and pride. In Ireland itself, however, there is a sense of distance from this kind of romanticised image, partly because it overemphasises the stereotypes that us Irish have been subjected to, of aggression, drinking, leprechauns, etc. Many native Irish view this portrayal as a simplified version of Irish identity, reflecting more of a diasporic and commercialized vision rather than a nuanced reality of modern Irish culture. The image has often become embraced abroad more than as a tribute to Irish resilience, whereas in Ireland, this focus has shifted towards a broader celebration of heritage, arts, social progress. To get on to the person who brought it to me, into my attention, there are practitioners such as Bernard Leddy, who I'm very grateful for bringing this video or bringing this idea to me as a video. He is ensuring that Bataireacht is not just a relic but a living practice. Leddy heads the European section of the Doyle family style. Now, something I should talk about, and probably I didn't get into in the video, is the Doyle family were the main practitioners, and they kind of made it into a format, a kind of a style of fighting. So this is what Leddy is involved with now. He actually was studying under one of the Doyles, and that is how he has learned his martial art of Bataireacht. So he's teaching the ancient art to students across Ireland and England. His path to becoming a Bataireacht master is as fascinating as the art itself. Beginning his training as a child in Shokotan karate, Leddy went on to study judo and aikido, reaching the rank of 3rd dan. As a prison officer, he gained first-hand experience in handling high-stakes situations. I bet the use of sticks was probably interesting in that environment, which further honed his understanding of real-world defense. After a severe accident halted his aikido training, he returned to his Irish roots and sought a new path. Under the guidance of Glenn Doyle, a hereditary stick fighter, as I mentioned earlier on, the Doyle family were very prevalent in this ancient art form. Leddy became a certified instructor committed to preserving and spreading the art of Bataireacht. Thank God, and thank you to Bernard Leddy for his dedication to the traditional Irish stick fighting, because it's reflecting a larger movement, one aimed at reviving and preserving this powerful martial art. So Leddy, through coaching courses and seminars, introduces new generations to the art of Bataireacht, reminding them of the skill, discipline, resilience that define the Irish tradition. As we explore the shillelaghs' journey from a tool of survival and honour to a cherished emblem of heritage, we see a profound story of cultural endurance. Bataireacht is a testament to Ireland's resilience, a martial art born out of necessity, refined through generations and woven into the fabric of Irish life. And now, through the dedication of Bernard Leddy and the Doyle family lineage, this ancient Irish practice is finding its place once again, inspiring a new generation to connect with the strength and spirit of Ireland's past. And there's one thing that I'm going to do in the next while is I'm going to travel to Bernard Leddy and I'm going to get an actual lesson from Bernard, and I'm going to put it on camera and give it to all of you as well. Bernard actually bought my book, The Forgotten Prince, as well, and I'm going to show the picture here now. So if you're interested in that, because the likes of Brian Boru and his sons would have used clubs and cudgels, they would have used the likes of shillelaghs in their own combat life as warriors in medieval Ireland. So if you're interested in learning more about the Battle of Clontarf and Brian Boru and Donnacha Broadair the Viking pirate, make sure you get a copy of The Forgotten Prince like Bernard has here. Healing the disconnect between the romanticised fighting Irish image and the reality of Ireland's cultural history requires an embrace of Irish heritage with a sense of pride akin to how other cultures honour their martial arts traditions. This means recognising that Irish stick fighting, or Bataireacht, while sometimes violent, also symbolises resilience, skill and community identity that emerged despite centuries of colonisation, suppression and division imposed both by the Church and Empire. This art form, like martial arts in Japan, China and other cultures, offers a way to connect with history without glorifying aggression. By reclaiming Bataireacht not as a relic of faction fighting, but as a disciplined and proud art form, it's possible to celebrate a fuller Irish identity. This approach synthesizes pride in ancient traditions with an understanding of Ireland's difficult past, creating a healthier, empowering narrative that honours Irish resilience. It encourages new generations to understand and respect their heritage in ways that acknowledge the impact of colonial trauma, while also fostering a modern Irish identity that embraces strength and cultural richness. I want to thank you so much for watching. This has been an actual dream to do this video, and I'm very happy that Bernard sent me a message and I got on to him and we talked, and I'm very grateful that Bernard bought my book and that I'm putting this video out. I feel like this is a hugely important part of Irish culture. I think it's going to be important for my own journey towards my ancient ancestors. I'm going to be buying a shillelagh. I'm going to have one, and also I'm going to get some classes with Bernard at some point. And also I would encourage all of you to do your own research. Also, I would love for you to make sure you're subscribed, hit the notification bell, leave a comment, and make sure you share this with someone who you think is interested. Also, I got a couple of videos coming up here and also a subscribe link here. So if you would do that for me and watch my next video, it would be amazing. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Bertie Bras and Films. Would you believe me? Oh yes.